Hey everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel, Strix Outdoors. In this video series, I'm going to show you guys how I do my own turkey fan mounts. Now this is part 2 of this video series. If you haven't seen part 1, be sure to check out the link at the end of this video or in the description below to see that. In part 1, I go over how I clean up the fan, remove all the meat and fat, and trim it all up, getting it ready to pin up on the board. In this video, part 2, I'm going to show you what I do once this is all cleaned up, how I apply the borax, how I go about pinning it onto the board and getting it ready to set and desiccate, and then ultimately mounting it onto the plaque. So stay tuned. Okay everyone, so as I mentioned in the first video, what we're going to need for this step is our clean turkey fan, some borax, and something to mount the fan onto. So I have this piece of styrofoam that I had left over, and it's the perfect size, so I'm going to use that. If you don't have a piece of styrofoam this big, you can use cardboard. Poster boards that people would use for like science fair presentations and things like that also work well. Basically, you want something big enough to encompass the entire size of the fan, and also something that you can stick pins into to hold the fan in place while it dries. Now this part is actually the trickier of the two parts in this series, because you really have to pay attention and think about how you want this fan to look at the end of the day. Applying the borax is going to dry and cure everything here to make it safe to store long term. But really the tricky part is arranging all the feathers and just getting it to look just right. So as we get going, you kind of want to spread out your fan and get an idea of how you're going to want it. Now as you're looking at your turkey fan, you'll notice these large feathers, but they all basically cascade underneath one another, starting from one in the middle. All right, so now that I have a general idea of how this fan's gonna situate on here, I'm gonna go ahead and apply a liberal amount of borax onto everything. Okay, now I'm going to make a little mound of borax here, just a little one, about in the center where this is going to sit on top of. Alright, now I like to start with the last feathers on each side and get them pretty close to flat against the bottom. Now, I don't like it to be a perfectly straight line. It needs to be curved just a little bit. You kind of set that and pin it to hold it in place. Okay, now I'm looking for symmetry, so I'm just trying to get these set about the same on each side, and we're going to set and kind of pin some of these feathers. Alright, as we were talking about earlier, I like to start with this bottom feathers here first and pinning those. Now when you're pinning, you're not actually pushing the pin through the main shaft of the feather, you're just putting it on the very edge of it and kind of securing it that way. And I like to put a pin on each side of the main shaft to kind of form a cross like this, with the shaft right in the middle like this, and that way it holds it in place. So again, what we're looking for is, I don't generally pin every single feather on here. What I want is just for it to try to be as natural as it can. Kind of shift the feathers around a little bit just to where they're nice and symmetric. Again, the main thing that you were wanting to check for is that you've got on the back set of feathers, you've got this center feather that's at the very front, and then every feather subsequent to that on each side is cascading below the one before. So these two are below the middle one, and so on and so forth. Now with the second set of feathers, this is the opposite. So the center feather is all the way at the back, and then every subsequent feather kind of goes on top of that one, and then the next one on top of the one before, and so on and so forth. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with how these are looking, so I'm going to go ahead and pin some of these as well. Okay, I'm pretty happy with it here, but you know, spend as much time as you need to get comfortable with what this arrangement looks like, because once it dries up and really sets, it's pretty much it. Okay, now we have the group of feathers over here in the front. And so what I find is if you kind of fluff them up a little bit and then let them kind of fall naturally. So with this group of feathers, what you want it to look kind of natural and just kind of lay there naturally without having them. Now I think I probably have too many layers of these feathers, so I'm going to trim some of this back. All right, so that's a lot more manageable. Again, I like to see these little color bands here and it to be pronounced. That means for me, usually, you know, it's about 1, 2, maybe 3 to 4 kind of levels of these other feathers on the front stacking up. And you just want to play around with the arrangement on this so it looks natural as they're stacking up and get good color. Now the one thing to note here is that since this skin is pretty loose, you can change the position of these quite a bit. You don't want these to be way up, because then you're going to end up seeing a lot of this fluff even through the plaque. So it also, a lot of it will depend on the plaque that you're using, but for the one that I'm using, you know, it's got a pretty tall front, so it's pretty forgiving in that respect. But I want this skin to be kind of down and this group of feathers to be down closer towards the bottom of the mount. All right, so now we're going to pin these to hold this in place, and then we're going to put more of the borax here and then put it away somewhere quiet that it can sit and rest for a week or two. So I'll also pin the beard, and I'm going to pour some borax on the end of that too, just to dry up that skin. All right, next we're just going to put this away somewhere safe and wait about a week or so. We can check it after a few days. What you'll want to do is check the borax and see how humid it's become. You can kind of shake it off a little bit and then add some new borax to continue drying this all out. Hey guys, so it's been about 2 weeks now since we first set up the fan and put the borax to dry it out. So we're going to remove this now, look at it, see if it's good and dry, and then continue with the mounting process. You'll need some Bondo filler and hardener. I think they're typically sold separately now, so you'll need to buy both. Read the instructions on the Bondo to learn about how much hardener you need to add to a given amount of filler. Here I added a little too much hardener, and the Bondo started setting up a little bit quicker than I wanted. It is probably better to work in small batches because you do want it to set up relatively quickly, so you don't have to wait too long before you can sand it down after it's set up. The turkey beard itself works great to dust off any remaining borax. You can also use a soft paintbrush to do the same. Now for the most part, the fan should just set down directly into that little bracket on the plaque. Now sometimes you will need to adjust that spacing just a bit, and I just use little pieces of cardboard basically to shim the fan in place to kind of adjust the position a little bit, and also to kind of hold it in place snugly. I don't use any kind of adhesive or anything like that to hold the fan in place. Well, if you did everything right, now you've got this beautiful turkey fan to hang on the wall, and you can be proud of yourself for having done the work yourself. Well, I hope you found this information useful. I'd appreciate it if you hit the like button, and also consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell for future videos. Hey guys and gals, good luck out there this turkey season, and I'll see you in the next video.